Okay, so chapter 4 is all about a case study in Canada, actually trying to classify the type of stakeholders that you get, or the champions of innovation. So the chapter starts with stakeholders of both people actively involved in the project and those affected by it. The reasons for taking note of the stakeholder perspective is that the built environment directly affects the population at large. The long-term, even non-consenting stakeholders and people who have no say in the definition of the project or its implementation. So it means there's a lot of people that actually benefit or is involved in a construction project, because we're creating an environment that people have to work in. Okay, so the first chapter looks at the creation of innovation and makes note of adoption and diffusion within how it's basically introduction, a little bit of background of what we've already discussed. And then the secondly, it focuses on the inter-organizational collaboration, temporary organizations. That's what a construction project is. And then thirdly, the concept of value is looked at. Okay, and then the fourth item that they look at is the perception of value of the stakeholders at a certain time. Okay, so certain stakeholders will have a certain value at a certain time of the project. Okay, should innovation be a goal, or should it be a means to achieve sustainable competitiveness? Okay, so that's a question that you guys need to think about a little. And then recent contributions argue that it is people's attitudes or behaviors, not technology, that need to change in order to significantly reduce the relentless pressure on the environment. One example of that is energy use. A simple thing like switching off the light whenever you leave a room can have a big impact on the energy consumption, rather than going around and fitting motion sensors in all the buildings. Without a very large cost, one can actually reduce energy consumption. Okay, so that's the type of thing that they're looking at. So the chapter looks at certain conclusions. The first conclusion that they make is value is not an intrinsic or objective given property of the change being realized. It is rather a quality that is perceived by someone, so within a certain context and time frame. Again, I think I'm gonna use this example of cars as an example of, in the olden days, it would have been seen that the more muscle, the more valves you can fit into your car's engine, the more innovative you are. Nowadays, it's all about energy consumption and being efficient. So it is really a perception of what is innovation. Innovation is a bit of a perception of what the current need is, and it's constantly changing and evolving to take into account different things. And then secondly, given the innovation exists only if it is adopted or accepted, the larger the group of stakeholders who perceive this value, the more legitimate the change will become. Diffusion is thus a cause of consequence of adoption and acceptance. So it's a public buy-in into this new technology. For instance, solar energy. There should be, it's usually a public opinion that drives certain areas, but as well the economic factors. As soon as people are affected economically, then that's a big driver to change. That's the other things that needs to be taken into account. Okay, then the chapter goes and they classify certain champions. So you identify appropriate and different organizations, and they bring them together and facilitate the dialogue and the exchange process between them. they solve inter-organizational conflicts, and they fulfill an important social task. Okay, so the champions are people involved on these projects. Okay, then going further, there are cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. So this is important. Cooperation is where people cooperate with each other. Coordinate is where they actually sit around and say, yes, we're getting together and we're tackling this problem. Collaboration is where you bring network and you bring in more stakeholders into the fold. Again, most authors agree that collaboration and participation play a fundamental role in public interest projects, particularly for widening the stakeholder involvement beyond traditional power elites and recognizing different forms of local knowledge. That's very important, and building rich social networks as a resource of institutional capital through which new initiatives can be taken rapidly and legitimately. Okay, so this you guys have to go through, and unfortunately you have to learn this. This is quite an important slide for me, is creating conditions for innovation in the built environment. So in Canada, from the research, they could classify the different stakeholders. So firstly, we have the mediation partner, a firm that accompanies the client and creates conditions conducive to collaboration and participation. That is now an advisory to the client. And then secondly, you have the integrated client, collaboration of different client stakeholders. That is where a collective stakeholders actually form the client, like a board of directors or so. Okay. Delegated project manager is a type of champion, acts as a partner, and delegated project as a delegated project manager. So this is usually someone that advises the client and gives them technical advice. Then you've got community support organizations, usually a non-profit organizations, as in intermediate between individuals and groups. So you can think about for instance, a body corp of a complex would be a community support organization, can be classified as a community support organization, where the community of that little complex actually contribute to the design of a building, because it's going to influence them and their market value of their houses in that complex. Then you get a design integration team. That's a consortium that is now a whole design team. That's the professional team. Then you have the project integration team, includes partners such as financial managers, construction capacities. This is a little bit more removed, more like a developer advising the client. Okay, and then you have participation of the organizer. Non-profit organizations facilitates public consultation. Okay, so this is your public organizations, is guys working with the public, like for instance with your municipalities, working with the town planners and so forth. Okay, so just to summarize, or the final thing is this, the champions types 1, 2, 4, and 6 participate in all phases of an intuitive up to closing, and then type 7 participation to a lesser degree in the approval phase. So if you think about your project, there is a whole lot of phases, and what this slide just basically shows you is that the champions have different roles in different phases of the project. So let me just get to that, sorry, here we go. Okay, so champions 1, which is your mediation partner. 2, which is your integrated client team, your delegation project manager. No, sorry, that's 3. Number 4, your community support organization, and 6, which is your project integration team, is all involved in all the phases up to closing. Okay, and then type 7, participation of the organizer. They're usually just involved to a lesser degree in the approval phase. And then you've got type 5, which is your design integration team, mostly during the design phase of your project. Then the chapter just closes off, although some facilitates technical innovation, which is types 2, 3, 5, and 6. Others establish better conditions for process-related innovation. So please have a look at this. This is actually on page, it starts on page 57 and it goes to page 58 where this is stated. So please have a look on page 53, 54, 55, 56 and 57 of what all of these champions include. And then, as a conclusion, stakeholders' perspective was discussed in this chapter. Okay, this approach benefits from adopting a broader view of the built environment, putting less emphasis on the construction industry as alone. And then the work of the champions varies according to the project phases and project life cycle. So I want you guys to go through this chapter and get it in your head of what stakeholders are involved in what phases of the project. Try and sketch a little picture for yourself, so that you can discuss this if one needs to list what type of champions are involved when. Okay, so this also take note that this was limited to Canada, so try and make it applicable to us here in South Africa. And I think that's it. Thanks guys for listening. If there is any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thanks.